Welcome back to Protecting Trade Secrets. I'm Professor Seth C. Oranburg. In the previous lecture, we built the framework, the 6 pillars of trade secret protection that form the foundation of every comprehensive TSPP. We explored how identification feeds risk assessment, how valuation shapes mitigation priorities, how internal controls enable external disclosure, how documentation supports enforcement, and how governance sustains everything. But frameworks alone don't protect secrets. Implementation does. And this is where most protection plans fail, not because they're poorly designed, but because they're never fully operationalized. Policies sit in binders. Training becomes rote. Access controls are bypassed for convenience. And when litigation arrives, courts find that reasonable efforts existed on paper but not in practice. This lecture addresses the implementation gap, the distance between what your TSPP says and what your organization actually does. We'll explore why well-designed plans collapse during execution, how to assign responsibility and accountability across functions, how to allocate scarce resources strategically, what metrics reveal whether protection is working, and how to structure a trade secret governance committee that prevents decay. We'll also walk through a detailed case study, a mid-sized manufacturer that discovers a departing employee has emailed customer lists to personal accounts, and how the 6 pillars respond in real time, from identification through enforcement. By the end, you'll understand that implementation isn't a one-time project. It's an ongoing discipline that requires cross-functional collaboration, visible leadership commitment, and systems that adapt as the organization evolves. Let's start with the most common failure mode, the implementation gap. Trade secret protection plans fail for predictable reasons. And it's almost never because the lawyers got the legal analysis wrong. It's because the organization didn't or couldn't execute. The implementation gap is the space between design and reality. It appears in several forms. First, policy-practice misalignment. The TSPP mandates that all employees sign non-disclosure agreements within 30 days of hire. But HR is overwhelmed by rapid growth, and half of last quarter's new hires haven't signed anything. Legal doesn't know because there's no tracking system. When a trade secret dispute arises, the company can't prove the employee was bound by confidentiality obligations. Second, resource constraints. The plan calls for quarterly trade secret audits, annual access control reviews, and recurring training. But the legal team is 2 people covering contracts, compliance, and litigation. IT is stretched thin managing infrastructure. No one has time for audits. The plan becomes aspirational, nice to have, never done. Third, cultural resistance. Engineers resent access restrictions that slow collaboration. Sales teams chafe at non-disclosure agreements that delay deals. Business unit leaders prioritize speed over secrecy. The formal policies exist, but informal workarounds proliferate. And when courts later evaluate reasonable efforts, they see the workarounds, not the policies. Fourth, siloed ownership. Legal drafts the TSPP. IT implements technical controls. HR manages employee agreements, but no one coordinates. IT doesn't know which systems house trade secrets. HR doesn't understand why certain clauses matter. Legal doesn't hear about breaches until weeks after they occur. The pillars exist independently, but they don't integrate. These failures aren't theoretical. They're the norm, and courts are increasingly attentive to them. In Enclosures Inquires versus Block and Company, a 2014 Seventh Circuit case, Enclosures developed a metal iPad case and shared designs with a manufacturer under an NDA. But the company publicly showcased the designs, shared them widely without additional controls, and failed to mark materials as confidential. The court held that having an NDA isn't enough when actual conduct doesn't reinforce secrecy. The lesson: courts don't evaluate plans. They evaluate execution. A perfect TSPP that's inconsistently followed is worse than a simple TSPP that's rigorously enforced. Closing the implementation gap requires 3 things: clear accountability, adequate resources, and cultural buy-in. Let's address each. Trade secret protection is a team sport. But if everyone is responsible, no one is accountable. Effective implementation requires clarity about who owns each pillar and who coordinates across them. The Chief Legal Officer CLO owns strategic oversight. This includes ensuring that the TSPP is legally sound, that policies comply with UTSA and DTSA requirements, that contracts with third parties impose adequate protections, and that enforcement decisions, when to litigate, when to settle, when to involve law enforcement, are made thoughtfully. But the CLO can't execute alone. Protection depends on operational functions. The Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, owns technical controls. This includes access management systems that restrict who can see what, encryption and data loss prevention tools, audit logs that track access and detect anomalies, cybersecurity defenses against external threats, and incident response protocols when breaches occur. The CISO's team implements the technical infrastructure that courts increasingly expect: role-based access controls, document classification systems, and monitoring capabilities. Without this, even strong legal agreements collapse when technical gaps allow secrets to leak. The Chief Human Resources Officer owns people-centric protections. This includes onboarding processes that ensure every employee signs non-disclosure agreements and receives confidentiality training, recurring education programs that reinforce obligations, exit protocols that recover materials and remind departing employees of continuing duties, and performance management that ties compliance to accountability. HR is often the first line of defense and the first place where gaps appear. If HR doesn't understand why trade secret agreements matter or doesn't have systems to track who signed what, protection fails before it begins. Business unit leaders own day-to-day operational compliance. They decide who gets access to sensitive information, whether third-party non-disclosure agreements are necessary before sharing materials, when to escalate concerns to legal or IT, and how to model confidentiality within their teams. Business units are where theory meets practice. If leaders don't reinforce secrecy, if they treat non-disclosure agreements as bureaucratic hurdles rather than essential protections, employees will do the same. The Trade Secret Governance Committee coordinates across functions. This cross-functional team, typically including the Chief Legal Officer, Chief Information Security Officer, Chief Human Resources Officer, and senior business leaders, meets quarterly to review the TSPP, assess new risks, update the crown jewel inventory, allocate resources, and ensure that protection efforts remain aligned with business strategy. The Governance Committee prevents silos. It's the forum where IT learns what legal needs documented, where HR learns which employees need specialized training, and where business units raise operational challenges that the plan didn't anticipate. Without clear accountability, without named individuals who own specific outcomes, protection plans become aspirational documents that no one implements. No company has unlimited resources. Budgets are constrained. Personnel are stretched. Technology investments compete with other priorities. Strategic resource allocation is what separates effective trade secret protection plans from wishful thinking. Prioritization starts with the crown jewel inventory. Not all secrets deserve equal protection. A manufacturing process that generates $50 million in competitive advantage annually demands intensive controls. Dedicated servers, encryption, limited access, tailored non-disclosure agreements, and continuous monitoring. A routine customer contact list that's publicly available on LinkedIn doesn't. Courts don't expect perfection, they expect proportionality. Reasonable efforts scaled to the value and risk of each secret. Allocating maximum resources to low-value information wastes money. Allocating baseline measures to crown jewels invites loss. The risk matrix, Pillar 2, guides this allocation. High-value, high-risk secrets get Tier 1 protection, strict access controls, encryption, audit trails, specialized training, and enhanced vendor due diligence. Medium-value, medium-risk secrets get Tier 2 protection, role-based access, standard non-disclosure agreements, and general training. Low-value, low-risk information gets Tier 3 protection, baseline measures, or public disclosure. This tiered approach ensures that resources flow where they matter most, and that courts see deliberate, risk-adjusted decision-making. Quick wins versus long-term investment is the second allocation challenge. Some protection gaps are easy to fix, low-hanging fruit that can be addressed immediately. Others require structural change. Quick wins include standardizing NDA templates across the organization, implementing document labeling protocols, conducting access audits to identify and revoke unnecessary permissions, and updating onboarding checklists to include trade secret training. These actions are low cost, high impact, and demonstrate immediate progress. They also generate documentation that proves reasonable efforts, even before more complex systems are built. Long-term investments include deploying data loss prevention, DLP software, building a centralized trade secret inventory database, designing a formal governance committee structure with meeting cadence and decision authority, and transforming organizational culture so that secrecy becomes a shared value. These initiatives take time, budget, and sustained leadership commitment, but they're what make protection durable. The key is sequencing. Start with quick wins to build momentum and credibility. Use early successes to justify long-term investment, and ensure that resources flow to areas where gaps create the greatest legal or competitive risk. How do you know if your TSPP is working? Hope isn't a strategy. Neither is waiting for litigation to reveal gaps. Effective governance requires metrics, quantifiable measures that reveal whether protection efforts are functioning. Metrics fall into two categories: leading indicators, proactive, and lagging indicators, reactive. Leading indicators predict future performance. They measure whether protection systems are being used, maintained, and reinforced before breaches occur. Examples include percentage of employees who completed trade secret training, with an example target of 100% within 90 days of hire and an 100% annual refresher, percentage of trade secrets in the inventory with documented access controls, target 100% for crown jewels, 80% overall, percentage of third-party relationships governed by signed non-disclosure agreements, target 100% before disclosure, number of access audits conducted per quarter, target at least one per business unit, and time to revoke access after employee departure, target within 24 hours. These metrics are actionable. If training completion drops, HR knows to escalate. If access audits aren't happening, the CISO knows to reprioritize. If non-disclosure agreements aren't being signed, legal can address the gap before disclosure occurs. Lagging indicators measure outcomes after events occur. They reveal whether protection failed and how badly. Examples include number of suspected trade secret incidents reported, not a failure metric. Reporting is good. It means employees recognize risks. Time to detect breaches. Shorter is better. Long detection times amplify harm. Percentage of incidents resolved without litigation, settlement, containment success rate. And enforcement outcomes. Injunctions obtained. Damages awarded. Favorable settlements. Lagging indicators are diagnostic. They tell you what went wrong and where to invest to prevent recurrence. But they're reactive. By the time they're triggered, damage has already occurred. The goal is to maximize leading indicators, proactive protection, and minimize lagging indicators, actual breaches. A healthy TSPP shows high compliance metrics, frequent audits, and few incidents. And when incidents occur, rapid detection and decisive response. Red flags that demand immediate attention include declining training completion rates, increasing incidents without corresponding, increases in reporting, suggesting undetected breaches, audit findings that aren't remediated within 90 days, and departures of key personnel without exit interviews or access revocation. These red flags signal decay, systems that were once functional but are no longer maintained. Addressing them quickly prevents small gaps from becoming litigation vulnerabilities. Let's see how the 6 pillars work in practice. Consider a mid-sized manufacturing company with 300 employees, $50 million in annual revenue, and proprietary production processes that create competitive advantage. The incident. On Friday afternoon, IT's data loss prevention system flags an alert. An engineer, let's call him Alex, emailed a spreadsheet containing customer pricing and order history to his personal Gmail account. IT investigates and discovers that Alex also copied technical specifications for a proprietary machining process to a USB drive. Alex is scheduled to leave the company next week to join a competitor. Hour 0 to 4, immediate response. It alerts the CLO and CISO. They convene an incident response team. IT, Legal, HR, Alex Business Unit Leader. The TSPP's Incident Response Protocol, Pillar 6, guides the first steps: preserve evidence, disable Alex's account, image his workstation, save email, logs, interview Alex immediately before he can destroy evidence or coordinate with the competitor, and assess what was taken using the crown jewel inventory, Pillar 1. Our 4 to 8 assessment. Legal reviews the inventory. The customer pricing data is classified as Tier 1, high value, significant competitive harm if disclosed. The machining specifications are Tier 2, valuable but partially reverse engineerable. Both are documented trade secrets with established controls. HR pulls Alex's employment file. He signed an NDA on his first day, Pillar 3, internal controls. The NDA explicitly prohibits taking confidential information and survives termination. Training logs show Alex completed trade secret training annually. Exit protocols were scheduled, but hadn't occurred yet. Legal reviews Alex's offer letter from the competitor. It's for a similar role, process engineering. This raises inevitable disclosure concerns, Pillar 5, enforcement readiness. Hour 8 to 24, strategic decision. The CLO evaluates options using the Calabrese-Melamed framework, Module 6. Option 1, seek immediate injunction under DTSA, property rule, stop the harm. Option 2, negotiate settlement with Alex and the competitor. Liability rule, price the harm, and avoid litigation. Option 3, involve law enforcement if facts suggest willful theft for commercial advantage, criminal enforcement under Section 1832 of the United States Code. The team chooses Option 1. The competitive harm is immediate and irreparable. Damages would be difficult to quantify. And the company has strong documentation, inventory, non-disclosure agreements, training logs, access controls, and forensic evidence. Day 2 to 7, litigation. Legal files a DTSA claim in federal court and moves for a temporary restraining order, TRO, and preliminary injunction. The complaint attaches the crown jewel inventory, Pillar 1, the risk matrix showing customer data as high value, Pillar 2, Alex's signed NDA and training records, Pillar 3, and forensic evidence from IT's investigation. The court grants the temporary restraining order, prohibiting Alex from using or disclosing the information and ordering return of all materials. The court also issues a limited injunction preventing Alex from working in process engineering for the competitor for 6 months. Head Start Doctrine. Post-litigation, lessons and updates. The Governance Committee, Pillar 6, conducts an after-action review. They identify a gap. Alex's USB drive access wasn't restricted, even though he worked with crown jewel secrets. IT implements endpoint controls to disable USB ports for employees with Tier 1 access. HR updates exit protocols to trigger immediate access revocation upon resignation notice, not just on the last day. This case illustrates how the 6 pillars integrate in practice: identification, knowing what was taken; valuation, proving it mattered; internal controls, non-disclosure agreements, training; external controls, not applicable here but relevant if Alex had shared with vendors; enforcement readiness, documentation, swift response; and governance, learning from incidents, all contributed to a successful outcome. Let's recap. The implementation gap, the distance between what your TSPP says and what your organization does, is where most protection plans fail. Closing it requires clear accountability, adequate resources, and cultural buy-in. Responsibility must be distributed across functions. The CLO owns legal strategy, the CISO owns technical controls, the CHRO owns people processes, business units own operational compliance, and the governance committee coordinates across all of them. Resource allocation should be strategic, tiered by risk and value. Crown jewels demand Tier 1 protection. Routine information gets baseline measures. Quick wins build momentum. Long-term investments create durability. Metrics reveal whether protection is working. Leading indicators measure proactive compliance, training completion, audit frequency, NDA coverage. Lagging indicators measure outcomes, incidents detected, enforcement success, red flags, declining metrics, unresolved findings, uncontrolled departures, demand immediate attention. The case study shows how the 6 pillars respond in real time when a departing employee takes trade secrets. Identification, valuation, controls, documentation, enforcement, and governance all contributed to swift, successful resolution. In the next lecture, we'll explore ongoing governance, how to sustain protection as your business evolves, how to adapt to growth and change, when to sunset obsolete secrets, and what board-level reporting should include. Thanks for listening. See you in the next lecture.